Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here with another Friday Reads. This is a special one today because it is the first Friday Reads of the summer, and last Friday, I launched my annual Big Book Summer Challenge. Now, if you missed that video, go back and check it out because this is a really fun challenge that I run every year. This is a big year because it's the 10th anniversary of the challenge, and there's more excitement than ever. We've got a lot of people already participating and a lot more who say they're going to later in the summer. The idea is very simple. It's meant to be super easygoing, like summer. The idea is simply to read a big book or more sometime during now and early September when summer ends. For the purposes of the challenge, a big book is simply any book with 400 or more pages. So some of them aren't even that big. And the key is you set your own goals, whether that's one big book or two or three, or whether you do what I do and pull a whole stack off your shelves so you've got lots of choices for the whole summer. You can see all my choices in my Big Book Summer Challenge video, and as well as a whole bunch of recommendations of big books that I have loved in previous summers. I'll also include the information down below that goes directly to my blog where the challenge page is. That's got all the details as well as how to sign up. So I hope you'll join me. In the meantime, I have started my own big book summer reading, and my first big book for the summer is one that's not too big. I started with a Michael Connelly novel, Dark Sacred Night. Now, Michael Connelly's a favorite author for me and my husband. He writes wonderful, fast-paced thrillers, which was another reason why I chose this as my first big book for this summer. I wanted something really fast and gripping that I could tear through. And this is certainly fitting that bill because I'm almost finished with it, and Big Book Summer just started a week ago. So this is just over 400 pages. I think like 420 maybe, something like that. Yeah, it's about 420 pages. So Michael Connelly is most famous for his series about LAPD detective Harry Bosch. He's written like 30-some books that have Harry Bosch in them. Recently, he started a new series featuring a female detective named Renee Ballard, also on the LAPD. And in the first book of that series, which was called The Late Show, readers got introduced to Renee, got to know her a little bit, and went along on some of her cases. This is the second Renee Ballard book. I've been waiting to read it because I really enjoyed The Late Show. And in this one, it's a crossover. So Renee finds herself working with Harry Bosch, which is just so much fun because it's two great characters. I don't actually read a whole lot of series. I used to read almost exclusively thrillers and mysteries, like when I was in my 20s. And somehow I kind of got out of that habit. I broadened my reading horizons. I read a wide variety now, but it's really fun sometimes to go back to one of these gripping thrillers that, and this is a great example. From the very first chapter, you just keep turning the pages. You can't wait to find out what happens next. So just very briefly, in this novel, Renee is still working The Late Show, which is the shift that begins at midnight in the Hollywood division of the LAPD. Harry Bosch has been, I think officially he's retired from the LAPD. He was kind of pushed out. That was a whole other story in a different book. So Harry is kind of semi-retired. He's got a part-time job as a detective with the San Fernando Police Department, which of course is much, much smaller than LAPD. But he's trying to clear up some cold cases for them, which is something he's very good at. He's a really tenacious detective. And his thing, which he says in almost every book, he said it right at the start of this one, is either everyone matters or no one matters. And so these cold cases really mean a lot to him. So you've got several things going on in this book. Harry's following up on a cold case with San Fernando Police Department about an old gang murder. Renee is working the middle of the night shift and picking up different cases that way. Though as a middle of the night detective, most of her cases get passed on to the day shift. So she doesn't get to follow through on things, which she really misses. One of the backstories here that was introduced in her first book, The Late Show, is that Renee experienced sexual harassment from her former boss, and she reported him. And because of that, she's kind of been blackballed in the department. He suffered no consequences, and he really did try to force himself on her. He suffered no consequences. She got moved out of the very prestigious robbery homicide division and to the Late Show in the Hollywood division. So that's kind of Renee's backstory. So very often she gets a good case in the middle of the night, but then she has to pass it on to the day crew. So what happens is one night, middle of the night, 3 a.m., Harry Bosch comes into the detective bureau and starts looking through some old files. And at first Renee's protective, like, who is this and what are you doing here? Then people explain to her who he is. He was very well liked among his colleagues, so among his immediate colleagues that he worked with. So they're pretty forgiving, and they allow him to come in and out once in a while. But Renee ends up connecting with him and partnering with him on this cold case that he's working with. It was a Hollywood cold case, just one that got under his skin, that went unsolved, that bothers him to this day, about a teenager who was homeless, living on the streets, selling her body in order to make ends meet and get drugs. And she was killed in a really violent, horrific way. Now, this happened like 10 years ago, but Harry's never forgotten her. And so he and Renee team up and begin looking into this very old cold case together. So I love that this book has all these different threads that come together. The part I just read last night that I stayed up too late reading, Harry was really in peril. So Michael Connelly's books are always exciting, always gripping, always fast-paced and filled with action. So I'm really enjoying Dark Sacred Night by Michael Connelly. Oh, one other point. Definitely recommend either the Bosch series or the Renee Ballard series, but also the Bosch TV show is wonderful. My husband and I watched the whole thing. I think they did 7 seasons maybe. It was on Amazon Prime. So if you're interested, definitely go and watch that. And now there's a new show on, I can't think of what the new channel's called, but it used to be IMDb TV, and they've renamed it. So this is free, and it's called Bosch Legacy. And it's about him as a private detective after he's retired. And meanwhile, his daughter Maddie, who's in this book as well, has decided to join the LAPD and is a rookie. So that's the new show, Bosch Legacy. And so far we're enjoying it, though it's been kind of weird watching that and reading this at the same time, because sometimes they kind of cross over or contradict each other. But both the books and the TV shows are excellent if you like mysteries and thrillers. Now, for my first audio big book of the summer, and yes, audios count too for the Big Book Summer Challenge. And for my first Big Book Summer audiobook, I chose a novel that came out a few years ago that somehow I missed at the time. It's called A Light Too Bright by Samuel Miller. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm about halfway through now. And it's about an 18-year-old young man whose life is pretty much falling apart. This really horrible incident happened. He has lost his best friend, his girlfriend, his car, his college scholarship, so he's really at loose ends. So his dad wants him to spend the summer with his aunt and uncle in the family homestead, the family home. So the main character's name is Arthur Lewis Pullman. Now, he is Arthur Lewis Pullman III, and his grandfather, the original Arthur, was a famous author. So famous that his first and only book is still taught in high school English classes 50 or 60 years later. So they paint him as kind of a Salinger-esque character, that he wrote this first amazing book when he was very young and then, became very reclusive. Unlike Salinger, he didn't write another book. So the younger Arthur is in the house, in his aunt and uncle's house. He's staying in a room where his grandfather used to stay, and he discovers a journal that his grandfather wrote. Now, in his later years, his grandfather had severe Alzheimer's disease, full-blown dementia. He often didn't make any sense. He was often mixed up with between the past and the present. We're dealing with this right now with my father-in-law. So the young Arthur finds this journal that his grandfather wrote. And there's this mystery surrounding the end of his grandfather's life. A week before he died, he left the house without anyone noticing. He got on a train, and no one heard from him for a full week until he showed up dead in Ohio. Now, by then, his dementia was full-blown, his Alzheimer's, and they have no idea. No one in the family has any idea what happened to him in that week. Well, now Arthur finds this journal that his grandfather wrote, and the last entry was written at about that time when he disappeared. So Arthur decides, with his own life just in shatters, he decides he's going to follow his grandfather's last steps and find out what happened to him. Of course, because his grandfather had late-stage Alzheimer's, what he wrote doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It reads kind of like poetry, but Arthur can't make a lot of sense out of it. But it does name a town in Nevada. So Arthur gets on the train, just like his grandfather did, and he heads to this small town. And that begins Arthur following this trail of clues that his grandfather left behind, perhaps inadvertently, but and he begins to learn things about his grandfather that no one in their family knew. So he follows the clues from Nevada to Utah to Colorado. Where I am now, about the halfway point, they're in Denver. Arthur's in Denver. Along the way, he kind of teamed up with this young woman his age who was also traveling alone, an Indian woman with a British accent, and they've gotten to be good friends, and she's helping him follow this trail. So at about this halfway point, the book took a strange turn that I wasn't expecting. And I really enjoyed the first half of it. So I'm interested to see where they're going to go with this. I don't know. But so far, I have loved the book, and I'm interested to see what happens next. So that's A Light Too Bright by Samuel Miller. And that's my reading for the week, my big book summer reading. Before I leave you, I wanted to share, because I haven't in a while, It's been incredibly hot and humid here, so I haven't spent much time outdoors. But I did get out early this week, I guess it was Tuesday. The forecast was 95 and humid for that day. So I thought I'd get out first thing in the morning before it got too hot. It was already pretty steamy out there, but I did take some video clips at the local nature center. So I will leave you with that, just some short video of a beautiful summer day at our local nature center. And before you leave, please let me know in the comments down below what you're reading this week, what you plan to read this weekend, and if you plan to join the Big Book Summer Challenge. Hi, I'm out here nice and early for me, at our local nature center just to try to get a little outdoor time before it's completely unbearable. It's supposed to be 94 and humid today, and I'm already completely fed up with the heat and humidity. I really don't tolerate heat well, so I know everybody loves summer, but I'm not a fan these days. We can't travel right now because we visit my father-in-law in his nursing home every day, so I decided today to try to get out early before it gets too hot. It's already pretty hot. And just come over here where it's shady and a little bit cooler and just try to enjoy a little nature time. So let me give you a taste of this. So listen to the bird song. This is a beautiful creek that runs through the nature center. You can see the sunshine reflecting off the water, and it's just absolutely beautiful and very peaceful here. You hear all the birds? And there you can see half of our iconic covered bridge. It is, I'm surprised, but it's already so lush here and summer-like that you can barely even see the bridge, which normally this is a great spot to see it from.